are talking Skin Creepers from 2018, and this is a German exorcism horror comedy movie. Now, I should say before I get any further in this review, I actually watched this on Tubi, and I have a little bit of a critique that I have to kind of put out there, which isn't actually the movie's fault. So this is, as I say, a German movie and spoken in the German language, and Tubi had subtitles. But I have to say the subtitles were really on screen for a very short time, every kind of sentence. So I missed some dialogue here. So I kind of picked up the majority of it, I would say, and obviously got the gist of the story, but I couldn't get every piece of information from this movie. It's not the film's fault, it's just that the subtitles weren't on screen for very long at all, just for like a second sometimes. I just didn't get time to kind of read all of what was said. So with that in mind, and that's not a critique of the film and won't factor into my review, but just to kind of put it out there. What's the story anyway? It focuses on two aspiring filmmakers who plan to make a porn film. One wants to make a straight porn film, and the other one wants to make more of an artistic movie with hardcore scenes in it. But anyway, they don't have a lot of money, and they have arranged for an American erotic actress, shall we say, to come over to Germany to be the kind of the main star. And they don't have a lot of money for the rest of it, so they managed to get this kind of dilapidated old kind of warehouse to use as a shooting location. They get a couple of prostitutes from the local pimp to be the kind of the rest of the girls, and the other money that they've got, they have to kind of put up this porn actress in a hotel. However, this hotel seems to be the problem here, because some years ago, this very hotel, and in fact this room that this porn actress is staying in, was actually the scene of an exorcism. And since this porn actress has a sinful past, she actually kind of reignites this sort of demonic force which possesses her, and chaos and comedy ensues. So let's talk about it. What works in this movie's favour? I think this setup is actually kind of quite fun here. Two hapless filmmakers, and they're obviously making a kind of gonzo style porn film, and when this actress starts kind of acting up, they just assume she's kind of on drugs and things, and she's, being bizarre, dark, and then a little bit violent, you might say, in the middle of trying to shoot this porn film. And they just think she's she's either drunk or she's done some type of drugs. No one really kind of quite knows what to do, but it's all a little bit sort of low budget and sort of guerrilla filmmaking. So it's quite a kind of a fun idea here. And, it's one I don't think they go far enough with, I have to say. But their setup is kind of quite fun. The second half of the movie is them taking him back to the hotel and getting some help and trying to do some sort of exorcism. All the while, we have this kind of pimp who is wanting to find out what has happened to his girls. This porn star has assaulted one of them. So I think that has some fun story elements here. And like I say, this is a comedy. And although I wouldn't say it's kind of laugh out loud, it's kind of like, it is kind of amusing, and a lot of the kind of the commentary on sort of exorcism style films and things, and they sort of are two filmmakers that say, why aren't we kind of quite as freaked out as we should be? And maybe we just haven't accepted it yet. They're kind of sort of saying things like this. So there is a couple of kind of funny bits of dialogue when you could read it, that I think is apparent in this movie. Second thing, I think the gore effects are fairly strong. Not that there's a lot here, but we do get some exploding heads. We get kind of someone's lip gets kind of ripped off and things like that, and that's achieved practically. The movie does have some CGI or video effects, and they don't look realistic, but again, it adds a kind of colourfulness to the proceedings here. So that's, again, it's when you towards the end of the movie, the third act, we see hell, and although it looks like green screen, I think there's at least some good ideas in regards to kind of how it looks. Obviously, being a German language movie, I'm watching and I'm reading subtitles. It's difficult to quite see the quality of the acting here, but I didn't think it was bad. You know, it's a little bit tongue in cheek, but I think everyone here did a good job with their kind of roles. You've got these two guys who are very much kind of guerrilla filmmakers and just kind of like flying with the seat of their pants and don't really know what to do, completely out of their depth, which adds to that kind of like that comedic value. And I think the idea here about this kind of how this all gets kind of set up, and the idea about this evil has kind of lived in this room, and because of this woman's occupation and her kind of like freestyling lifestyle, shall we say, with booze and all this kind of stuff, she's really an open door for these demonic spirits. It doesn't get any preachy or anything like that, but I still think it was quite a fun idea. So let's talk about what doesn't work. Now, I have to say, I think the setup of this movie is fairly strong. It's not a particularly long film, and the first half of the movie is these guys kind of getting the wheels in motion. We see some flashbacks of like the previous exorcism, and obviously our porn star Sasha sort of turns up and kind of gets influenced, and no one really knows. And then the second half is kind of more of the exorcism stuff. The first half is strong, but I've got to say the second half, when we get to our exorcism scenes, I feel the concept doesn't really go anywhere. It kind of ends up being more or less a straight exorcism film from then. And I think the fun concept that it had in this setup with these sort of two guys doing this kind of film, I thought they were going to try and make it into some sort of exorcism movie or something like that, but nothing is really done with it. It's just kind of like a straight exorcism ultimately. And we get this kind of preacher guy that turns up, who seems to appear almost out of nowhere, just and he's conveniently got all the kind of the answers and things like this. And it's kind of like the exorcism sequences, although there's a little bit of drama in regards to this pimp, are pretty uneventful, and I have to say not the most kind of interesting. Another thing this movie does as well, it kind of like tells you in exposition scenes that you have just witnessed. So we get this these two guys called this preacher in, and then they basically tell the preacher the first half of the movie in a kind of like about nearly a 10-minute scene of them basically just recanting what you've just watched in the first half of the movie. And then he's telling these two guys about the previous exorcism that we've kind of seen flashbacks of. So it kind of feels like this movie is like just telling you stuff that you have already seen as a kind of a viewer. So yeah, I think the end of this movie ends up being a little bit of a kind of a damp squid, and as I say, it has a somewhat of an overly kind of CGI feel to it, where they've kind of tried to have these like magic effects and stuff, and it, I guess it's kind of fun, but ultimately it's sort of like kind of cheap at the same time, and ultimately looks more of like a low budget Power Rangers kind of show almost in some respects, but with boobs and gore. But it looks weird. It looks like it doesn't suit that sort of demonic kind of exorcism scene in a way, because there's too much sort of CGI going on in the background. Overall, I think this movie has a fun element to it. I think the concept is somewhat wasted, and ends up being, the second half at least, somewhat of a generic exorcism movie. But the first half and the setup is strong. I just say they didn't do much more with it. I'll give it a 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I shall look forward to seeing you next time.